Podcasting, the latest frontier. These are the episodes of a Catch as Catch Can podcast. Its continuing mission: to explore strange, nerdy topics, to chat about sports, movies, sci-fi, and so much more. To boldly pod where this nerd has gone before. Captain's log, pod date 0324.19. And yes, I'm working on my Shatner, and yes, happy birthday to the captain himself, William Shatner, who turned 88 years old just the other day. Now, on this episode of Too Boldly Pod, we have lots to discuss. We're going to discuss UFO sightings and people being judgmental. We're going to discuss fan theories. People always have fan theories about their favorite shows. We're going to delve into that. We have a fun little Musings from my work van home edition, all about what the hell is a Camisole anyways. And we'll finish things off with this week's The Q, where we ask people who their most overrated popular musician is. So, Scotty, set phasers on stun, engage. Now, as you know, this podcast is loosely defined as a Catch Can podcast, which basically means we can talk about anything and everything, and we probably will. And alongside of that, or shoehorning to that, you also know that I am a huge fan or follower or believer in a lot of things that are paranormal. So I want to just take a few minutes here to discuss something that's kind of got me worked up just a shade pertaining to the paranormal world. And last week we discussed the TV show Project Blue Book, and we're going to recap it again here in the next couple episodes with my friend Rob. So you all know that I am a UFO buff. So why is that? Well, I had a sighting when I was 15 years old, and we're going to pause there before I get back to my sighting, because the other day on terrestrial radio, actually it was on a sports talk station, they were sort of mimicking and mocking UFO sightings, and it kind of got my dander up, my ire raised. And it wasn't the fact that they were mocking it, because we all mock things, and more times than not, it's harmless. But this was something different, because just short of calling everybody that thinks they have a UFO sighting a liar or a fool, and that simply is the furthest thing from the truth. Now, bear with me here for just a second. Skeptics Exhibit 1 is always UFOs are an impossibility because of the great distance it takes to travel from star system to star system. And yes, that is in fact true, but here's the thing. 300, 400, 500 years ago, people on this planet argued with you that A, the world was flat, or B, the Earth was the center of the universe and the sun traveled around the Earth. And it wasn't until scientific exploration and discovery proved that those facts were in fact wrong. So my point is, just because you think of something does not necessarily mean that it's 100% fact, because a lot of things throughout life have been proven factual at one point, but then later on proven to be in fact untrue. Now, am I saying every single sighting and every single UFO witness is seeing an alien spacecraft from another world? No, I absolutely am not saying that. But what I'm saying is you have to leave, however much of a sliver you may want to possibly leave in there, but you have to leave that sliver of possibility that what people see could possibly be an alien spacecraft. Now, let's take the phrase UFO. It's an unidentified flying object. What people are seeing, they cannot identify. So, just keep in mind, I mean, it's okay to pantomime. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to be a skeptic. You should be a skeptic. You should question things. Skeptics are a good thing. But you also can't 100% rule something out unless it's absolutely 100% empirical. And that, my friends, is where we have the issue, because UFO sightings are rarely empirical. And we can always use the example that someday when the UFO lands on the White House lawn, then we'll have empirical proof that UFOs are in fact real. So just keep that in mind next time you're so quick to judge somebody, so quick to discount somebody's sighting. Just because you didn't see it and just because science has yet to prove it does not necessarily mean something isn't real. Now, going back to my sighting, am I going to sit here and tell you that I 100% think that I saw an alien spacecraft? No, I absolutely am not. And it has been, going on 30 some years almost since the sighting, 30 plus years. And I can't say that it was an alien spacecraft, but what I can say is it was not an airplane. I can say it was not swamp gas. And I can say it was not, most probably, a helicopter that we know about, at least a helicopter that was available in the mid-1980s. So my experience was laying in bed in the middle of the night, and I saw something to the south of me out the window, and it was moving extremely slowly. It was low enough to the ground to know it wasn't a star or anything like that. So I ran outside really quickly and watched this thing ever so slowly move from the west to the east. And then at one point when I got over a wood line, it went straight down, 90-degree angle down. And okay, could it be swamp gas? Sure, but I've never seen any type of gas suspend itself in midair and then move down, straight down in a solid sort of state. The other point is, to discount the swamp gas, is even though it was at night, I could see there was some solidity to it. It was round and it was solid and it was bright, sort of whitish, yellowish light. And the next discount that I have to why it wasn't an airplane is airplanes don't go make 90-degree turns in midair. And airplanes are generally more than a 200-300 feet up in the air for the most part. Why can I discount it as a helicopter? Is it did not make any sort of noise. And again, this was in the middle of the night. So there wasn't anything making noise other than frogs and crickets and the creatures of the night, if you will. Now, people will ask me, were you dreaming this? No, because immediately upon it disappearing past the wood line where I couldn't see it anymore, I ran back into the house and woke my sister up in the middle of the night and had to tell her about it. So, can I say it was an alien spacecraft? No. Can I say it was a UFO? Absolutely I can. And I guess my whole point to this rant is, next time you want to discount somebody, just keep in mind, just because you haven't experienced it doesn't 100% mean that something isn't true or real. If you have thoughts about UFOs or have a paranormal sighting that you would like to come on this podcast and discuss, let me know at Facebook or Twitter at Too Boldly Pod, and we will have an unbiased conversation about your experience. And now it's time for another rousing edition of Musings from My Work Van. Life Edition. What does Life Edition mean? Well, I'm not at work. I am home here at the studio, and I just wanted to pass on a little entertaining tidbit about what happened in my everyday life just an hour or so ago. Now, we all have to go shopping from time to time to sort of subsist and survive and whatnot, but I decided to ask my mother if she needed anything from the store also. So, just a little background, a little narrative before we continue with this story. My mother will be 88 years old next week, so I had her in one of those little amigos as we walk around the store. And I get my stuff, and she has a gift card that she wanted to use up at this place that is a mart of walls, if you catch my drift. So she asked me where the ladies section was. So we found the ladies garment section of the store, and we're walking through the aisles, or I'm walking and she's on her amigo. And after a while I said, what exactly are you looking for anyways? And she told me she's looking for a camisole. And the first thing I thought was, what exactly does my 88-year-old mother know about Queens of the Stone Age? No, wait, that's Monsters in the Parasol, not Camisole. So I had no idea what she was referring to, so we found a clerk and we asked her, and she really had no idea where they might be, and quite honestly, I wasn't sure she even knew what a camisole was either. So I texted my sister, and after I got about 30 laugh emojis, she told me it was basically a ladies' undergarment t-shirt. So we continued to go aisle to aisle to aisle to aisle looking for them, and I started to get a little bit annoyed and whatnot. So I texted my friend Narek, and I'm going to share with you our conversation that we had. I said, my mom has me going aisle to aisle looking for camisoles. Her reply, oh God. My reply, yes, I was pleased. Narek, Godspeed, my friend. Godspeed. My reply, speed wasn't exactly the verb I had in mind after God. And needless to say, we ended up finding them. She got a couple, and she was happy she was able to use up her gift card. And I just want to say this to close. I had fun. I laughed about this whole thing, shared a little text interaction with my friend where we laughed about it. But just one thing you have to remember, our loved ones are only with us for so long. And yes, sometimes they can annoy us. Sometimes we can annoy them. But in the end, when they're gone, and we're not going to have them anymore. So cherish every moment you possibly can. Because when it's done, and when it's over, you're going to wish you had more time. Within the creative universe, we're all fans of something, whether it's movies or television shows or books or comics. And within that fandom, there is the subplot, the subspecies, the subgenre of the fan theory. And what that basically is the point where we get so enveloped in the universe of something we love, we start to sort of take creative license with our knowledge of the universe and create little theories in and of ourselves. And we often like to share them with like-minded individuals. And you all know I'm a huge fan of Star Trek and Mystery Science Theater and old 50s sci-fi movies and the cartoon Futurama. So I was just watching a video from Screen Rant about 10 Futurama fan theories, and it got me to thinking, fan theories are great. They're sort of the 21st century equivalent of the fan magazines back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s before the internet explosion. And it gave us an outlet to find those people, those like-minded people, and share your thoughts and ideas about that. And the example I will give, the correlation I will give, since I'm lucky enough to be of the age to experience both generations of the fan magazines and the internet evolution, when Star Trek The Next Generation came out and you had Starlog and all of these great fan magazines, there were people that would write in and talk about certain things that they think the underlying tones, what they believe a direction of a show. It wasn't called a fan theory back then. It was just basically people saying what they felt about certain shows, unwritten rules, unspoken truths, however you want to phrase it. And I remember we talked in an earlier podcast about the old sci-fi versus the new sci-fi, and this is sort of a coming together of that conversation, because in Starlog, way back when Star Trek The Next Generation started, there was all these original Trekkies that were severely anti-Next Generation, and they were trying to draw corollaries between Data and Spock. And at the time, I was in my teens, and granted, the first season was slow, but it was new Star Trek. I was a Trekkie, and I loved the fact that there was new Trek to watch. So I wrote in to kind of reply to all these haters, for lack of a better term. I thought I was being sort of coy and original, and I basically said that you can hate on The Next Generation all you want, but I, for one, find Lieutenant Commander Data to be just as intriguing as Mr. Spock was fascinating. And as I said, I thought I was being funny, original, deep, if you will, and boy, did I get blasted the next month in the replies. So for that part of the whole scenario, you had to wait a month for the trolls to come out. Now in the internet age, they're pretty much instant degratification, if you will. So that story aside, getting back to fan theories, my question out there is, we all love stuff, as I stated at the beginning, and I want to know what, if any, great fan theories you have heard, or maybe you personally have, about your favorite show or one of my favorite shows, and you would love to share on a future Too Boldly podcast about fan theories. And as I stated, if you're a fan of Star Wars or Star Trek or Doctor Who or Futurama or the stuff that I love and you have one, share it with me on Facebook or Twitter at Too Boldly Pod, or even if it's just something that you love. If you're a fan of the horror genre and you have a fan theory about that you'd like to share, I'd love to have you on here, or at least write to me so I can share it on a podcast. And what I'll do is I'm going to kind of go through a few of the sort of, not necessarily theories, but thoughts I have on some of my favorite shows, and we'll revisit this next time or in a future podcast, and let's set up some fun little fan theory conversation. And now we've reached the favorite portion of the podcast for a lot of people, and it's where each and every week we pose a question to our friends on social media. And this week's Too Boldly Pod question was another musical sort of fun question. And the question is, or was, what musical act, even if you don't dislike them, do you think is overrated? And we got a ton of great responses to this act. And just remember, before I read them, just because an act, a performer that you enjoy may get named here, doesn't necessarily mean you have to get angry, because we all have different tastes. Now, let's start off with our friend and author Paul Canellis. He said Oasis, but I do mostly really dislike them, except for Don't Look Back in Anger, which I really love. Noted author W.C. Hoffman said Easy, Bruce, #not my boss. My friend Jim replied Creed, Scott Stapp, Evanescence, Amy Lee, Panic at the Disco. Guess he just wanted to be clear about who he disliked or who he thought was overrated. Mark replied Led Zeppelin. Sarah replied Rush. Tracy replied Bon Jovi. My friend Narek replied U2. My buddy Rob replied Metallica. Kate replied The Rolling Stones, to which I replied, I did not know that. Actually, that was the worst possible... that was the worst Carson imitation. I did not know that. Okay, I won't do it anymore. I was trying to be funny and do a Carson imitation, and it sucked. But her reply was, and the reason I said that was because I know she is not the biggest Rolling Stone fan to choose from. Anyways, she replied, there were so many from which to choose. Sandshoes replied, Pink Floyd. Sorry. You know, I think their music is complete garbage. It seriously gives me migraines listening to it. You know what, Sandshoes? That's all right. He knows they're one of my favorite bands, and you know what? There's stuff that he likes that I can't stand either, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Dave replied, Kid Rock. I probably wouldn't go to his shows or listen to him if he wasn't from Michigan. And then he went on to say, same with the White Stripes. Mike replied, Guns N' Roses. Doug replied, Yes, to which I said, that's a lie. Everybody knows Yes is awesome. But that's fine. If he doesn't like Yes or thinks they're overrated, that's fine. He's wrong, but that's fine. And listener Dave said, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but honestly, Dan, Scott Baio. He's got to hang up with Scott Baio. I just haven't quite figured that out yet. And finally, my friend Patrick replied, Kiss. Now, as far as my thinking of who is overrated is, there's plenty of people out there that, like Kate said, there's so much to choose from. And I am really not the biggest fan of, wait for it, and it's generally any singer, male or female, that really goes almost Shatner-esque with pushing their voice or going overboard with their voice. I mean, sometimes you need the power in a song or your lyrics or your singing, but sometimes you're just doing it because you can do it. That being said, I like Mariah Carey songs. I'm not impressed with some of the antics. Same with Celine Dion, and same with, at some points, Whitney Houston. So there you have it. There's this week's Too Boldly Pod question. If there's an artist out there that you don't necessarily dislike, but you think's a little overrated, let me know on Facebook or Twitter at Too Boldly Pod. And that's going to wrap up another edition of Too Boldly Pod. I hope you enjoyed our conversation about UFO sightings. I hope you enjoyed our quick little question, our little offer out there about coming back on to talk about fan theories. I hope you enjoyed my musings from my work van home edition about what the hell a Camisole is and the fun I had with my mother at the store. And I hope you enjoyed this week's The Q, all about overrated musical acts. Now, if you have any thoughts about any of the topics we discussed, or you would like to come on this podcast and discuss something with me, contact me on Facebook or Twitter at Too Boldly Pod. And as usual, I don't have a closer to this show, so I'll just say this. Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. Well, you all know the rest. Talk to all of you next time.
WLLP Spock Rock Radio.